Hello and welcome. I am Betsy Bowling. This is Fred Faulkner. We're from the Finance Committee, and we'd like to walk you through the financial aspects of town meeting articles for this year. Fred, would you like to start, please?
Sure. I'll just walk us through the some of the departmental budgets, and then Betsy will wrap up with some of the capital items. The current estimates for total revenue and available funds are about an increase of $2 million, or about a 5.25% increase over the 2016 levels. And we are assuming a full use of the 2.5 levy limit increase. And our budget adheres to the adopted financial policies, which requires reserving some money for debt service reductions and capital funding. The next slide will show sort of an overview of the appropriation summary. As you'll notice, the town operating budgets on this show about a 5.4% increase. Schools about a 4.35% increase. However, if you take out some of the reserve fund activities that are now in the operating budget for the town, and the $50,000 that we added to the school's capital out of their school operating budget, they both come in right around 4.6%. We'll be talking about in detail about all of the other line items as I go through the future slides. The staffing changes for 2017, we're able to add a highway engineer. It's a new position, about a $70,000 position. And this is actually budget neutral, as we're already spending this money on contract engineers, so we felt it was more effective to hire an individual and have the person within the highway department. In the town clerk's office, we've added about $9,000 for increasing the hours from 35 to 40 hours a week, and these hours are planned to be evening hours to make it more convenient for a lot of people to access town clerk activities. The veterans agent stipend increase of $2,500 annually from $5,000 to $7,500 is to cover an additional 3 hours per week. The veterans agent puts many, many more hours than that in, and we just felt it was fair to him to recognize some of the activity that he's doing for our veterans. We have one new police patrol officer, and the police chief and and deputy chief worked hard to fund a lot of this through finding ways to cut overtime, so that there's only an impact of about $35,000 to the operating budget. And within the budget that the schools presented, there are two full-time equivalent additional teaching staff positions in the 2017 budget. In general government, changes from the 2016 levels. The elections increase of $3,500. As you know, there would be a presidential election coming up, so it's just in order to fund the activities around that. There's $90,000 increase for IT expenses. $54,000 of that is due to the outsourcing of support that was previously provided by the Littleton Electric Department. In-house staffing, they've decided to go outside for those services, and actually they've cut some headcount down there to accommodate that. $35,000 to provide additional vendor support service for the municipal side of the IT activities. Public buildings increase of $45,000, $40,000 increase is to provide technical services and design support for the PMBC to actually do pre-work for the capital projects that you'll see when Bonnie goes through Betsy goes through the capital project list later in the presentation. General insurance increase of $25,000. It's based on our present claims experience. It's just something we have to do. And all step and 2% COLA increases programmed into the budget on both the town side and the school side. Public safety and fire EMS inspection services. Changes from the 2016 levels, $22,000 increase in building inspector budget. Now this is a function of the amount of building that's going on around town, but it is fully funded out of a revolving account where the contractors pay fees and the fees then pay for the building inspector. However, we have to increase the operating budget and then replenish the money from the revolving accounts. There's $34,000 increase in police and dispatch expense for animal control services, previously paid out of revolving funds. We've closed out the revolving funds and put that directly into the operating budget. Okay, education, Littleton Public Schools and technical schools. The appropriation increase for the Littleton schools is an increase of $750,000. It is inclusive of the steps lane changes and COLAs. Schools will also use about $890,000 of circuit breaker funds and about $480,000 of school choice funds toward their total spending plan. We've also increased their capital plan for materials and resources by about $100,000. Neshoba Tech appropriation increases by $32,000. Enrollment increases from 33 to 34 students from Littleton and their increased budget. We did receive a $20,000 decrease from the Minuteman Technical School appropriation because the student that was going there graduated and we no longer have to pay that $20,000 annual fee for that student. Public Works and Highway. The Highway Department was able to decrease their roadway appropriation by $62,000 and transferred that into highway wages to help fund the highway engineer position, which we all feel is the right thing to do. There is an $8,200 increase in wastewater stormwater expenses from $91,000 to $100,000. That's based on a 3-year average actual expenses of about $88,000, and we're anticipating increases in the DEP mandated monitoring. This also pays for the running of the septic control system down at the high school. Health and Human Services has a $55,000 increase in veterans benefits expenses from $120,000 to $175,000, and that's based on the caseload of this year. We actually had to fund the veterans benefits expenses increase this year through a reserve fund transfer because of the increased caseload that they are seeing in there. 75% of these expenses are reimbursed to the town, but they aren't reimbursed until the next fiscal year. So we have to fund it every year, and then we get 75% of that money back the following year. It goes into what's called undesignated fund balance and then used for budget purposes the next year. And the next area is the cultural and recreation, parks and recreation. The general fund subsidy this year is at about the same level as 2016, plus salary and benefit increases. So their town's portion of the Park and Rec is $113,000 for salary and benefits this year. The fringe and retiree expenses, employee retirement benefits fringe increases of $385,000, or about 5.6%. Of that, medical increases are up 12%, about $200,000. Retirement assessment of about $24,000. OPEB funding, which is we're funding a minimum increase of 10% plus adjustment for new hires, is $217,000 for OPEB this year. Unemployment expenses decrease of about $100,000 based on our claims experience. Debt service, long-term bonded debt and short-term borrowing changes from 2016 levels. We actually have a net increase in debt service this year of about $152,000. The major contributor to that is the short-term bans for Church Meadows land acquisition will be paid off in the year 2017. So there's a large one-time payment at the end of that ban. So that's a major piece of the $150,000 increase. Funds available through long-term debt, retired and short-term reductions are made available for capital plan or one-time expenses only, not operating budgets for the town per the town policies. The short-term debt for roadway plan increased in 2017 by about $600,000. And the two major projects there that are using those funds are New Estate Road and Nagog Road projects.
All right.
Okay, Betsy, if you'd like to take us through the next few slides.
Okay. We're going to talk next about the capital expenditures. This is Article 7, the standard planned capital expenditures that we fund through the free cash, the undesignated fund balance, and so on as part of the policies. So this year we have $1.7 million in planned expenditures. 500,000 of that, 511,000, is the PMBC facility assessment recommendations. This is, you might remember, a couple years ago we did a big study. We paid for some consultants to come in and go through most of our buildings, the majority of our buildings, and determine a long-term plan of what maintenance needs to be done to keep them going, to make sure that we're not missing things and doing shortening the maintenance that should be done and costing us more money down the road. So we got $500,000 there. The big tickets this year are school curb and sidewalk paving, town hall roof, and other such items. We have $158,000 to replace the highway sidewalk plow, and I think we all can give a shout out to Jim Clyde for the phenomenal work he does to keep these machines running and get the full useful life out of them before they need to be replaced. $150,000 for school resource materials. That could include textbooks, new curriculums, things like that. $106,000 for police patrol vehicle replacements, obviously get regular use and need to be replaced on a regular basis. So we have a plan there so they don't all get done at the same year. There's $100,000 in additional funding for Castle in the Trees. This completes the funding. There was also funding that came from the state, $100,000. There was $75,000 as a donation in kind. And they did some fundraising as well. So this will enable that to go forward. $100,000 from technical services needed to meet the stormwater permit. This is funded from the Clean Lakes account, but this allows us to meet some of the new requirements on stormwater. And in addition, there's a $10,000 new item in the capital this year. This is additional funding for Park and Rec, specifically for the purpose of maintaining Alumni Field. We all know that it has some issues, and this is not major renovations, this is maintenance. And so this is an additional item that's in the budget this year. All right, so other items on in town meeting this year, as part of the special town meeting, Article 4, there's a request for money for a fire station facility design. The new fire station, of course, has been in the plans for many years now. The expectation is that if, with this approval, that they would have design and bids in time for fall town meeting and if approved at fall town meeting, would then start construction soon thereafter. Alumni field renovation design. This is a newer topic, but one that's needed. Fincom has not yet voted to recommend or not recommend this. There's still been changes and a lot of discussions going on. Clearly, there are needs for updates at Alumni Field. It's clearly recognized, both in terms of the field as well as the structure, the stands, and so on there. There are still a lot of discussion, though, about whether that particular article or the approach should be more holistic and look at all the fields and do feasibility studies and so on. Fincom has had a lot of discussions about that. We were hoping maybe some change in wording to the article, but that didn't happen. So we're still discussing it, and that will be voted on before town meeting. Fred, you want anything else to add?
No, that's just fine.
That's okay, yeah, okay. It's a big item, and it's important for a lot of people in town. We want to make sure we get that one right. All right, Capital Stabilization Fund. This was established in 2014 as part of the policies and part of the changes. We put at a minimum 1% of the capital plan expenditures every year gets added to this. Per new policies this year have been changed because we had to accommodate years where, for whatever reason, there's a especially large undesignated fund balance. We want to be able to put more of this into capital stabilization if there are known projects. So this year that happened. Current balance, if approved at town meeting, it will be $2.9 million in the capital stabilization fund. The potential upcoming uses for that would include the fire station, athletic fields, library, roads, land purchases. There could be other things. The idea here is to put money away when it's available. Again, one-time money goes to one-time things. There's never operating money that gets used for this. And by having the stabilization fund, then you have the discussion when these big ticket items come up. Do we borrow? How much do we borrow? How much do we use from our savings account, and balance those out for the minimize impact on the taxpayers. To use any of these funds requires a 2/3 vote at town meeting. All right, the approach, the Fincom believes that for large capital projects, like a fire station, like athletic fields, like major land purchases, in accordance with the town's financial policies, that debt exclusion should still be utilized. What that means is it would have to go to a ballot, a town vote at the ballot boxes, not at town meeting, but across the whole town. So this ensures broader awareness and affirmation from all the citizens, and it also provides flexibility for maintaining required services and upkeep. So if we do the debt exclusion, it authorizes the town to borrow money for that project. Then we can decide separately if you're going to borrow the full amount, or if we want to use money from the Capital Stabilization Fund to do it. But it allows us to make those determinations based on other needs in the town, so we don't get in a situation where, where we have put so much, used all our money for this, and then we end up, there's not enough free cash going forward, the undesignated fund balance. So it impacts operations and other things going forward. We've had some of that situation in the past. So this just gives the town more flexibility to manage things prudently and wisely. Okay, and we can also use this in such a way that it could all be used for one project, or you could use it to minimize the impacts across multiple projects. There's nothing that says this all has to be used for one. And I wanted to point out clearly that for when I talked about debt exclusion, it requires a vote at town meeting and at the ballot. So it's not either or, it's both. Okay, so our policies and the bond rating. So as you know, the town has financial policies. They've been very effective for us, both in terms of just making sure that the one-time money are used for one-time things. So as we have undesignated fund balance coming available, if we have debt that's being retired and other things, if that money doesn't get rolled into operating expenses, it is not sustainable. But in fact, we can use that for our capital projects. This is very important because it has allowed, like since 2009, we have not requested any capital exclusions for things like vehicles for the highway department or the police department, so in which we used to do. I can remember a couple of two-day town meetings, many two-day town meetings, where we were there the second night voting on, should we have this truck, we pay for this truck or that truck, and so on. So our policies allow for things to be much smoother there. In addition, our town bond rating was increased 2 steps year before last, and that was largely because we have these policies that are, and I think the word that they used when we got our rating increase was that they are embedded and sustainable. So it's important that we stick to these policies that are there. They're there for a reason, and they've done us well, both in terms of our bond rating, which literally saves us $1 million over the bond issue term, as well as just putting the town in general on a good financial position going forward long term. Long-term financial stability is really the key. Okay, so looking forward, continue obviously always to be monitoring the impact, both revenue and expense of new developments in town. We know there's new growth revenue. We saw some of that this year. It was a nice thing to have a little bit extra revenue to work with as we were going through the budgets, but also made it a little more difficult because then you have to make choices because you still don't have enough for everybody to do everything we want to do. So we'll continue to manage and monitor the revenue and expenses. So there's new growth revenue coming. We see continued residential growth. We see continued commercial growth in town, the value of those sites. What is the impact of the schools of the new residential growth? How many students are arriving? Demand for public safety services continues to grow. The social service aspect of all our public safety groups, as well as health and human services, continues to grow. People's expectations of what should be provided by their local as well as other governments continues to grow. Elder and human services, as the town ages, all our demographics say that people are in Littleton. They like to be in Littleton. They feel good here. And so even once the kids are grown up and grown, a lot of people want to stay here. So our population is aging, and that requires more and additional kinds of services than we focused on so much in the past. Recreational services are also becoming more and more of a priority. Our teams are doing very well. We have large participation in the schools in our athletic program, so it's an important part of the fabric of the town. And so we need to understand at what level do we want to be funding that to get the most bang for the buck. I think Littleton in general is pretty proud that we're a do more with less kind of a town, and we've done very well. But some of the facilities clearly need some updating, and so we need to understand that and balance that with all our other priorities. And always the potential impact of the OPEB funding requirements. These are the retiree medical benefits that the town is responsible for. And we have a large liability there right now, and we're never sure where the state is going to come down on all that. So that's why we're here, the Finance Committee, and our wonderful town staff, and particularly Bonnie Holston provided a lot of support to do this program, as well as to all the work to keep the town running so smoothly. And I'm proud to be part of this town, and I hope you are too. And we are financially in good shape and have some nice, difficult decisions to be made going forward. But it's nice to have options and continue to work with everybody and understand all the needs across the town. And hope we serve you well. Fred, anything else you'd like to add?
Nope. Hope we have an epic crowd at town meeting. Look forward to seeing you all there.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.